right? Nationwide, it's not really that much different. It's in the rearview mirror. It's really not that much different, right? And it's definitely not different for people who know what they're doing. It is really fearful, or there is a lot of fear in the market for people who never really knew what they were doing and were able to get by. A couple of trends that I'll just let you know are happening in the rest of the country. Buy-side commissions are rising in the country, okay? And the trend in the rest of the country, and I asked Mel about this earlier, in the rest of the country, the trend is buyer agents are not calling and asking what the offer of compensation is. They're just putting it in the deal. Keep taking on new initiatives. Keep thinking about your business. That's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So I want to talk to you about what I call the IB gap, okay? Now I've always called it the intellectual behavioral gap, okay? And as I started putting this presentation together, I knew I had my thoughts on it. And then I started in a couple of cases, I'm like, well, I want to see what so-and-so says about this. And he just called it a different thing, but it's the same thing. So I just want to start with a few quotes because I'm a huge quote guy. The first one is from Norman Schwarzkopf, famous general, Stormin' Norman. And he said, we all know the right thing to do, the hard part is doing it, right? So in the military world or in life in general, we all know what we're supposed to do. And then somehow we get off track. Maybe it's because of watching too much news and we get stagnant and we get scared to make a move or whatever. I'm going to try to help you. I'm at least going to give you strategies today to get over that, okay? The next one is a gentleman that I'm very, very lucky to call a friend. It's a guy named Jack Stack down in Springfield. I think I've mentioned him to you before. But Jack says there's a fine line between intent and behavior. He has a company now it's called SRC Holdings. It's a holding company of 48 different companies that operate around the world. And he started out as a mid-level manager with International Harvester, was sent to Springfield, Missouri to shut down their remanufacturing facility in Springfield. And he went on a mission, if you will, to empower his employees to understand the importance of the numbers of the business that they were doing. And they put together $1 million, they put together $100,000, $10,000 a piece from 10 people and went to International Harvester and said, we'd like to buy the company from you instead of shutting it down. And International Harvester said, fine, buy it. And Jack said, well, will you finance it for us? And they said, no, you better go find the money. And we want $10 million for it. He went to a series of banks, north of 50 banks, all turned him down. A gentleman sent him an article from a bank in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that they were in trouble at the time because they weren't making risky enough loans. It was an article in the Wall Street Journal. So Jack got on a plane with the article and he flew to Pittsburgh and he called them and he said, I've got a deal for you. And that bank loaned them $10 million with $100,000. The company has now, if you were one of the original people who put the $10,000 in, your $10,000 is worth about $13 million, okay? And if you read about Jack at all, and I would challenge you guys to read about Jack. He wrote a book called The Great Game of Business. They actually have one of their companies is The Great Game of Business in Springfield, where companies come in from around the world, and they teach them how to empower their people as to the numbers of what's going on. If you were one of the people that were an original investor, it's an amazing, amazing thing. He is an amazing man, and he's just like, I love math. So what we're going to talk about today is math, honestly. So that's why I want to show you that. And the last one was from a gentleman from way back when, Benjamin Disraeli, who said, action may not always bring happiness, but there is no happiness without action. And that is true. If we get up in our own heads, we have some great ideas, right? You ever have a great idea that you're like, I think that would really work, and then you don't do anything with it, and then 6-8 months later you see somebody that did it, and you're like, damn it, I thought of that. I'm going to try to help you bridge that gap today, okay? Because there is a gap. There is a gap between what we think of and what we go do. Why is that? So the IB gap is simply that space between what we intellectually know to do and what behaviorally we actually go do, right? So intellectually, we get it. We're not supposed to eat sugar. We're not supposed to eat a lot of sweets, right? We're supposed to work out every day. We're not supposed to consume too much alcohol. You're supposed to get 8 hours of sleep, whatever we know this. We get it. And yet life happens, right? We know we're not supposed to stare at our phones all the time. And yet life happens. The dopamine rush, I guess, that you get from posts, right? I mean, we all get it, right? You post something, raise your hand if this happens to you, because it happens to me. You post something on Facebook, and it's all you can do to wait like an hour to see how many people might have liked it, right? That's a dopamine hit, okay? Jeff and I were talking earlier to kind of cabbage on what he opened with. There's a movie called The Bridge of Spies. Anybody ever seen The Bridge of Spies? Tom Hanks. And it's about a Russian spy. And, we tend to worry a lot about stuff we have no control over. We tend to worry a lot about real estate transactions. I have a client down in Houston, Texas, and she's always like, I can't sleep because of this. And I said, well, can you fix it? Well, no. I go, then what are you worried about? And then there's a famous little scene in this movie where Tom Hanks looks at the Russian spy and he said, you don't seem to be too worried. And the guy goes, would it help? I mean, they're in the trial. He's maybe going to go to prison for the rest of his life. Well, why are you not worried? Would it help? I mean, if it would help, I would worry about it. And he makes this comment about the boss may not always be right, but he's always the boss. Would it help? So kind of use that as a filter. Are you worrying about things you have no control over? A lot of us do. My wife is the worst at this. We were watching the hurricane stuff this morning, like everybody was. And I'm like, well, do you know anybody there? Well, no. I'm like, it's great to be compassionate, but let's don't have it ruin the day, okay? Right? I can't go down there. There's nothing I can do about it, right? Those of you that have property down there, I hope your property's okay, but you're here, right? So let's talk about that piece of the puzzle. I believe we all have the perfect business model in our minds. I do believe this. I know I have the perfect business model in my mind, and every day it's like, well, what do I need to go do to get closer to my perfect business model? But your perfect business model is different, guys. Everybody's model is different. And we can take it at the micro level of individual versus team, right? Some of you are thriving as individuals. Other people are like, I really need the support of a team, right? Some people do, some people don't. Some people think, well, everybody's got a team, that must be the way to go. I'm going to go build a team. The teams are not for everybody. They're just not. I had a client in Tulsa a few years ago, and I'm like, dude, if there was anybody that should never do this, it's you. He just couldn't get out of his own way, right? I mean, he just wasn't wired to go do that. So I want you to get dialed in, and I'm going to be back in December when we're going to do actual business planning. But today is I want you to walk out of here with a couple of your big ideas and really work on doing the things we talk about today so that we can take action on them. Because there's anything more frustrating than having the big idea, not taking action on it, and watching somebody else go do it and go, damn it, right? So you have to have the big ideas. What keeps us from implementing our big ideas? That is the crux of today. And it's simply this. It's ideas versus models. It's ideas versus models. We are salespeople. We have lots of big ideas, right? We have lots of big ideas. We are not good at modeling things out. Salespeople are not good at modeling things out. Modeling things out requires you to sit down with a calculator and a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper and do some math. And if you'll do the math, then you'll gain some confidence from that. So I frame it this way. We tend to take action on ideas. And when you take action on an idea, one of two things always happens. And it ends up in exactly the same spot every time, without fail. You take action on an idea and it works famously in the very beginning. And then it stops working so well. So what do? You quit. And you go look for the new idea. Or you take action on an idea and it doesn't work quickly. And what do? You quit. Either way, you quit. But if you take the idea and you slow down and you start to understand the importance of models and really doing the mathematics of this, it'll build your confidence. Because when you have an idea shored up by a model, you'll go do it. Okay? Now there's all kinds of dynamics that start to come into it, and we're going to get into this today. With your big idea, do you have the financial capability to implement it based on the math? Do you have the skill set? Do you have the materials? There's all this stuff that happens once you have the model. Think of yourself as, and a lot of you in the room do this, you're a developer. Well, you just don't go, well, that's a cool piece of land. I'm going to go develop that. I hope you don't do that. You have to figure out the model. Why? Because in most cases, you have to go to a banker to get them to loan you the money, right, to implement the model. Well, what do you have to take to the banker before you have the project? You got to take a pro forma, so you got to go do some math. And for some reason, for years, it'll be 40 years for me in this business in March, we've never done that as realtors. We've never modeled stuff out. And I think really it just basically is this. It doesn't cost enough money to matter to do any of this stuff. You're not plunking down $500,000 on a lead generation play all at once, right? You're not obligating yourself to have to pay back $500,000, so it's like, let's try this. Maybe it'll work, right? And I think that's what trips us up, okay? I think models are just as important if you're an individual agent or you're a team. If you're doing small projects or large projects, things will fly or die literally on paper. So here's the rules of the game. Number one, it's always harder than you think it's going to be. Rule number two, it always takes longer than you think. Okay? You got to go in with this mindset. This is going to take longer than we think, and it's going to be harder than we think. And I got that from my partner, Dan Clark. This was always his rule. He's like, oh, how this works, Wayne. It's always harder than you think, and it always takes longer than you think. Now, Dan, over the years, amassed quite the portfolio of rental property, like ridiculous portfolio of rental property. And I had him speak to our agents back in the day, and I looked at him and I said, did you ever think what you were doing wouldn't work? And he goes, I don't know, I knew it'd work. He said, I had it all worked out on paper. He goes, the question was, could I gut it out? And I used to have people that would, they'd come in, and the new agents, talking about joining the company, and we'd walk out, and Dan would happen to come in sometimes in his little black Mercedes, convertible, and they're like, who's that guy? I go, that's Dan Clark, my partner. So I want to be him. I'm like, oh yeah, you do. But do you want to be the him driving the beat-up Honda 25 years ago while he was making payments on all those houses that have now paid off? Because if you don't want to be that him, you ain't going to be this him, unless we win the lottery or Keno or something, right? And I think that's the only reason I brought that up, my son was playing music last night in Springfield, and they had Keno. And my wife and I went, we'll go down there for a little while. I'd never played Keno before. Y'all ever played Keno? Yes. I had more fun. Just $2 at a time, just while I was having a cocktail. Anyway, I don't know why I brought up Keno, but I always do that stuff. Anyway, the rules of the game are, it's always harder and it always takes longer. But if you fortify it with mathematics, with a model, with an idea, so you can figure out really what's going to happen, your confidence goes up, and all of a sudden you start doing things. Most of the mistakes I've personally made in my life, had I understood the model habit back then, never would have done it. Because this thing it was never going to work, right? Number three, the math never lies. That's a famous quote from Dennis Curtin. Wayne, the math doesn't lie. Once you work the math out, then you can go forward with confidence. And number 4, everything will fly or die on paper. Every idea you have will fly or die on paper. Now, by show of hands, how many of you right now, when you have an idea, you sit down and do a lot of math about it before you pull the trigger? Anybody? Okay. I want to try to show you a pretty easy way to get there today. All right? A thing that I developed years ago, and I still use it, and it does work, right? Everything flies or dies on paper every time, right? Seemed like a great idea at the time. I deal with a lot of brokers this way. I got brokers that, wow, lots of offices. Just lots of offices. Not really very profitable, and I'm like, there was one, the guy was not a client of mine, but he was being bandied about as, this is the guy we all want to be. He's up on the East Coast. I won't mention his name. And he called me, and he had 9 offices and 100 agents. And in the brokerage world, if you have 9 facilities and 100 agents, quite frankly, you're broke 9 times. That's just the reality of it. And I asked him, I said, he started telling me where these offices were, and I said, did you do any research before you went there? And he goes, well, no, I just always liked it there. I thought it was really cool. So I thought, I'll put an office there. I'm like, did you figure out how many agents were there? Well, no. Did you look at the competition? Well, no. I go, and? He goes, probably should have done that, huh? And I said, yeah. And this is a thing, okay? We let our emotions get in the way all the time. I'll give you another example. Those of you that go to Springfield every once in a while, you ever eat at Metropolitan Grill? Anyone? Anybody go to Metro? Right? Pat Duran, great restaurateur, fabulous guy. He went down to Bentonville, Arkansas, about 6 years ago, and he had an idea of a taco. He wanted something he could franchise, and he went down to Bentonville to open one up. So he goes down there and he opens up this restaurant, and he closes it within like 6 months. And I'm like, dude, what happened? And he goes, the reality of it is, Wayne, I really like Bentonville. I thought it was cool. I like going down there. I thought it'd be cool. It'd give me a reason to go down if I had a restaurant down there. He goes, I didn't do my research. He said, I thought that students in Fayetteville would drive to Bentonville to go to work. He goes, that was a huge, flawed assumption. He said, half of the restaurant I never could even open because I couldn't get wait staff. Now, the good thing about Pat is, and he's famous for this, when he sees it's not going to work, he's out. He will not ride these things into the dust. But even someone that is that successful with a fabulous, and if you've never been to Metro, next time you're in Springfield, if you ever go down there, you should go to Metropolitan Grill. It's just a great experience, especially for those of us that live there, because he's just one of the best restaurateurs I've ever met in my life. And if you're ever in Davenport, Iowa, just not that you would be there. Anybody go to Davenport ever? You ever eat at the Duck City Bistro? Well, if you're ever in Davenport, Iowa, because I was just up there on Friday, go to the Duck City Bistro, because it's like Pat Duran recreated again. The guy comes out. I go in with this group. There's 8 of us who went up there to play golf, and the guy that took us, he said, we're going to go eat this place I always go, Duck City Bistro. So we walk in, and they have one of those glass cases of the specials of the night. And the hostess is like, what, could I walk you through this? And Monty, the guy that took us up there, he goes, where's Jeremy? Now, Jeremy's the owner. And she goes, well, he's in the back. He goes, we'll wait for Jeremy. And she's like, oh, okay. She gets it. This guy comes walking toward us, and is an Asian guy, and one of the guys goes, Jeremy Asian? Monty goes, nope, just keep waiting. Then all of a sudden, here comes this guy, white chef's hat, white chef's coat. He comes walking out, big old handshake to Monty. He said, gentlemen, let me tell you about our specials this evening. and he goes through this 7-minute deal. The whole restaurant stops. He's got it all down. I mean, you can tell it's ingrained in him. But I'm like, oh, this is going to be some fabulous experience. And it was. And it was. And one of the things I always talk to you guys about is the customer experience. Are you providing an unbelievable customer experience? Because you need to be. It's very, very important. And honest to God, you need to model it out, what it looks like. So it's not just taking on new business tactics, as we're going to talk about today. It's modeling out your past client systems, if that's what's driving your business. It's modeling out conversion rates if you're in the pay-per-click world. It's modeling all these things out and then making really good educated decisions on what we're going to do and stick with, because the math tells us when it will kick in. That's the purpose of today. And it's always about good money chasing good business. And all money is good money. That's a Wayne Frederick quote. All money is good money. When you spend any amount of money in the pursuit of your business, is it the highest and best use for that money? Does anybody follow or get emails from now it's Broke Agent Media, and in the beginning they started out doing just these funny realtor clips. You guys know what I'm talking about? BAM. Does anybody get the BAM emails? Did you get the email on Monday with the guy from Real Scout that they interviewed? It was a link. They'd done this big, so between Tom Ferry's organization, T3, Real Scout, and some others in concert with the brands, they did this massive team survey. Jeff, I'll send you the link if you don't have it, so you guys can watch it. About 50 minutes long. It's really good. It's really good. And they talked about how much money is being spent in the pursuit of paid lead gen, how much business is actually coming from it. And they did this giant survey. It was very interesting. The vast majority of the business is still coming from sphere of influence. And they talk about the disparity between the amount of money and time that's being invested there versus chasing all this new stuff that we've all bought into. Y'all don't have Zillow Flex here, I don't think, right? And I don't know if there's any Zillow players or not, but Zillow Flex is Zillow's new thing that's come out. In the old Zillow model, you just pay per lead, right? You pay X amount and they give you the leads. Zillow Flex, you don't pay per lead. You just pay a 40% referral fee on the ones you land. But they just announced that, oh, by the way, now that we got you used to that, you're now going to pay between $3,000 and $5,000 a month for the right to pay them up to 40% referral fees. Yeah. So just FYI, there's a lot of money being played. There's a lot of models being executed, for lack of a better word, on you guys. Because we don't model things out for ourselves. So if you want to flip the script, let's start doing our own modeling and making some really educated decisions on what works. Not the sexy stuff we see on social media, right? Not the I'm afraid not to, I got to do it, whatever, okay. So it's basically just a huge gap between what we know intellectually and what we behaviorally do. That's the IB gap. And the bridge is models. That's what I want to talk to you about, okay? To show you how to very simply, with one little page, model something out, okay? Oh, I don't know why that's in there twice. Okay. So we do have it. There's a great book called Rocket Fuel. Anybody ever read the book Rocket Fuel? Okay. Talks about visionaries and integrators. Many of us, most of us, quite honestly, are visionaries, right? We're big picture people, but we tend to lack consistent integration, leading to frustration. It's also the reason why we take action on an idea because we're a visionary, and then we just quit. But that's okay because we have another idea, and we're going to go do that, right? And what the key is you have to have integrators in your business. Now, for every 10 visionaries, there's one integrator. Integrators are 10 times harder to find than visionaries. Us visionaries, we're a dime a dozen. We're everywhere, the big idea people. But the implementation of those things is what the key to this is, right? The long-term being an integrator. So, let's see who you guys are. First 2 pages, you have 2 tests to take for me, if you would, please. Okay? The test is really, really simple. As you read one of the comments, rank yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. Just circle 1 through 5. This is you. 5 being this is massively you, 1 being, oh no, that's not me. So take that test, and then there's a second page with different questions. Take that test. This will take you a little bit of time to do. Okay, everybody done? So I've learned something today. One person in the room decided they couldn't ever give themselves a 5, which you should have. So his score is actually higher than what you're going to learn here in a second. Okay, so what you just took was a test out of the book, Rocket Fuel, okay, as to whether you're a visionary or an integrator, okay? So the first test you took was the visionary test. Raise your hand if your score is north of 90. Anyone in the room? Okay. How many of you are 75 to 90 on visionary? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's crazy. I'm doing my own math here. 50 to 75 on visionary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 of us. 25 to 50. What? You don't need to go. 1, 2, 3 people. And anybody less than 25 on visionaries? Okay. Go to the next test, the integrator test. All right. How many people are 90 plus on integrator? 1. Okay. 75 to 90 on integrator. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, and you were scratching your, yeah, okay, 8, okay. I was about to count you in there, okay. 50 to 75. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 of us. 25 to 50. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us. And less than 25. Me. Okay. I was the one here, and I would have been the one over here when I took it. Okay. So what does this tell us? Anything? It tells us that the majority of people are in here, and it also unveils the challenge for us. We have a lot of ideas as visionaries, but we're not really great at implementation of the ideas that we have, okay? So the optimal thing is where you have a visionary and an integrator working together, okay? I'll give you some like real world examples of this. Yes?
Is it a plus or minus if you have the same score on both?
No, listen, and you guys know me well enough to know I mess around with personality tests all the time, right? There is no good or bad score, ever. There is not, hey, you're destined for greatness, good luck. There's just not. It's about aligning a business model with who you are. And I've been messing around with this now for 30 years. I mean, literally 30 years. 30 years ago was the first time I ever took any kind of a personality test. I give them out to people all the time. I try to get my clients to give them as part of the recruiting process because it's such a huge deal. People who are successful in real estate sales, I will say this with no variation. The people who are successful, their business model is in harmony with their personality. Every single time. You look at somebody and you find out how they're running their business, and then you give them the test, it's in direct harmony every time. Those people who are stressed out, who are not having as much fun selling real estate, you will see a disparity between their business model and who they actually are. People who aren't successful in real estate, they're trying to do a bunch of stuff they're never going to do. And then they just quit trying to do stuff they're never going to do, and then they leave. Statistically, that's 78% of the industry within 18 months and 83% of the industry within 5 years, and there's our industry, right? So if you're 50-50, right, it means you can come up with some big ideas, but you're not enough of an integrator to do the math regularly to see if it's a good idea, right? This is just how we are, and I think it's just such a huge issue moving forward in our industry. I made this comment to people the other day. I don't remember who I was talking to. A lot of the rules that since went away in August, the NAR wanted to shroud them as protection of the consumer, right? It's protection of the agents. I mean, we got accused of collusion. We lost because we're kind of colluding, right? Trying to always shore up the guy that sold one or two a year, or the lady that sold one or two a year, right? They pay dues. They drive the dues revenue and the organizations and all that stuff. I'm sorry, I'm very black and white about this. The marketplace is now forcing us to up our games, period. I could pull it out and show it to you. I wrote about this in 2004. I was like being Nostradamus. Were's where this looks like it's going. It's when the internet was first starting to get just a little traction. And I said, there will end up being two types of agents, great ones and cheap ones. Because there's so many agents buried in the middle of this that I've always called tweeners, right? And by the time they realize what's happening, they'll have to go cheap because they won't know how to be great and they won't put the time in, and they'll all go cheap. And I still think that's what we're going to see happen. This business is going back to nose, chin to chin, face to face, voice to voice conversations with your clients. Not a tech play. I mean, tech is maybe how you acquire or bump into somebody. It's about conversations you have with people. Can you make this easier for me? Right? And so all of this business modeling thing is really, really important. The highest score I've ever heard anybody get on the visionary is Carl Sanfilippo. Now, Jeff and Jason, those guys know who that is. He was 96. I was 92. Okay, I'm a big picture guy. I cannot survive without an assistant. Okay? Carl was a 4. Well, he couldn't be a 4. Whatever, 20. He's a 20 on Visionary, or on Integrator. He's like, he ain't going to integrate anything. He's got to have people around him that integrate. He just let go of a person last week, and she said, I've never been fired. And he said, I've never fired a person in upper management before. So we're on the same page. Sorry, but we're moving on because you're too full of drama and I can't handle it. And he called me and he's like, I'm going to do this. I'm like, okay, I know you are. Then he called me afterwards and he's like, oh, you need to talk about it? And he goes, no, I feel really relieved. I'm like, yeah, just spoken like a true high D, this is what has to happen. Let's go do it, right? So what we get caught in is right here in the middle, honestly. I have these great ideas, but I'm not disciplined to do this. So how do we bridge that gap, right? Are you going to change yourself? Probably not. To me, that's the power of collaboration. That is the unwritten power of the company that you're in. Because when I have this idea, go get it to an integrator or someone that will slow down and help you work your way through the math, and it'll come screaming off the page whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. This is why I'm really challenged with the EXPs of the world, or where you don't really have anybody to talk to regularly, that you can't engage. It's one of the beautiful cultural things you guys have. But I'll try to drive home the point of what a big deal this is. So a visionary is an idea generator. An integrator is an ideal implementer. A visionary looks at the big picture. The integrator is detail driven. The visionary sees the future, and the integrator sees all the problems with the future. Yeah, but is a common refrain from the integrators. And so there becomes this push me, pull you thing between, but we really need to go, yeah, but. Think of the visionary as being the general who goes, we're going to take that hill. And the lieutenant goes, well, how are we going to do that? I don't know, that's for you to figure out. We're going to take that hill one way or the other. We're going to go do this thing one way or the other. That's why you're here. You figure out the 4 options that you think are the best. You bring them back to me. We'll make a decision, because that's what visionaries do. We make decisions. And then here we go. And every time what happens? They take the hill. Sometimes it's harder than they think it's going to be. Sometimes it takes longer than they think it's going to be. I had an interesting conversation with Richard Mendenhall about this one day. Richard was a Green Beret, and he would never really talk about it much. And one day he looks at me, we're talking about golf, and he goes, Wayne, why is it that I can play really good on the front 9, and then I don't play good on the back 9? I go, oh, Richard's tension. He goes, well, but sometimes I play really bad on the front 9, and then I play really great on the back 9. I go, that's lack of tension. He said, I don't think that's it. I go, yeah, it is, Richard. I'm a golfer. I know how this works. That's exactly what it is. He goes, that's not it. He had never mentioned this whole Green Beret thing to me before. And I go, well, I think it is. He goes, it's not it. He goes, let me tell you something. You go into battle. Now, when I'd asked him before about being a Green Beret, he goes, I laid in the weeds and counted Jeeps. He goes, no big deal. It was no big deal. He goes, when you go into battle, he says, there's 3 types of people in battle. There's those who throw up before the battle, those who throw up in the middle of the battle, and those who throw up after the battle's over. He goes, for me, when we got into something, everything was in slow motion. I just understood. I could, it's like, what's that movie with Matrix? That was kind of what Richard was describing. And he said, we were in a 3-day firefight trying to take a hill. And he goes, I'm totally calm the whole time. He said, we got on that helicopter, and when they got us out of there finally, he said, I threw up all over the inside of the helicopter. He goes, it's not tension. And I'm like, okay, Richard, I get it, right? I get it. Visionary has a hunter mentality, and an integrator has a farmer mentality, right? So agents who are big on the integration side tend to have more of a past client system. That would be the farmer mentality of this. And the hunter mentality are the prospectors of the world. So if you're high up on the visionary, you tend to be a prospector, okay? Visionary wants the spotlight. We know that a lot of realtors are visionaries because they want the spotlight. They want the plaque, they want the trophy, right? The integrator likes the shadows. They don't want to go up on stage. They don't want to be the center of attention. So I'll give you some, I may have done this with you before, but I'll go through it again. So visionary is Warren Buffett. We've all heard of Warren Buffett, but very few people have heard of Charlie Munger, who ran Berkshire Hathaway. That's the visionary versus integrator. Steve Jobs was the visionary of Apple. Who was the integrator? Wozniak, exactly. Bill Gates was the visionary of Microsoft. Who was the integrator? Paul Allen. Paul Allen is the one that actually ran Microsoft. Henry Ford was the visionary for automobiles. Who was the integrator of the, and they changed automobile manufacturing with the assembly line. Henry Ford is credited with the assembly line. But who was the integrator? Guy that nobody's ever heard of. A guy named James Couzens actually invented the assembly line. Henry had the idea, but somebody else went and did it. Now, how in the world does this play out in your business? There's nothing more frustrating as a visionary than to have a lot of these great ideas that you don't take action on. You've got to have an integrator to go do that. I have seen it, I lived it when I had a team. And this is where I learned about culture and my particular team. I had a team back in the day before a lot of you were in real estate and before teams were even a thing. And I would always have these new ideas. And I needed to bat them around. I wanted to defend them. I wanted to do the mathematics of it. And I was surrounded by honestly, the wrong people. And I got submarined by one of my staff people. They wouldn't vet it with me. I didn't know I was right. I have this idea. What about this? And people would say, well, you're the boss. And I'm like, that's not what I want. I have this idea. Let's talk about what this would have to look like. And then sometimes I just go pull the trigger, right? And then people would go to my assistant/sister and they would tell her that I didn't really, I'm not really sure that I'm down with that. And she would say, don't worry. He comes up with new ideas all the time. He'll forget about it. Just keep doing what you're doing. I thought I was an anomaly. I won't tell you all the details until I got to the regional level. And I witnessed it, and I sat there, and I'm like, wow, this is a thing. Where Dennis had all these ideas we were going to do for the next year. And then we took a break, and all of the staff looked at one person, not me because I was new, and they said, oh. And I literally sat there and watched somebody go, you know how this works? He's always coming up with new stuff. He'll abandon it in 6 months. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm like, oh my gosh. This is probably the biggest stalling out thing in organizations is you got the visionary out there. And this is why I'm such a huge fan of Jack Stack. Because Jack Stack took the time to train, guys rebuilding engines. And he showed them how to read a balance sheet. And he taught them how to read a P&L. And they started to understand, right? They started to understand that it was important that they did their work in a timely manner. Because that led to all these other things. And if you were an SRC person, it's an ESOP, it's an employee-owned company now, and they walk into the building that they walk into, they own. Where they work, where they do their dirty work every day, they own the building. And he's just an amazing, if you ever get a chance, he's just an amazing individual. But it's all about mathematics. And I think this is sorely lacking in real estate companies to a great degree, and definitely in individual real estate agents' businesses. So I want to try to help you with it. So now that we've established who you are, let's start talking some strategies of what in the world do we do with this, right? So anybody have, and this is kind of broad brush, but if 8 people in the room, you have more ideas than you can shake a stick at, okay? But if you're down here, you've got to have someone to integrate. Right? And so what do we need to make sure we're always doing? Especially if we're on a team and you're the idea person leading a team. You need to be having staff meetings on a regular basis. You need to know who your integrators are so that you can give them those tasks and let them vet the pros and the cons, the goods and the bads. Okay? So the human struggle, I believe, is just time and money. I think we all deal with it. I think it's why I played Keno last night. Maybe I can make a little extra money, right, for no time. But I do believe this is really what drives us, is time and money. And I think you have to maintain a net income, net time focus. The realtor mantra, quite honestly, guys, is, well, I'm going to go do this, and if I just get one deal out of it, it'll break even, so that makes it good. That's a bad way to look at this. We got to be looking at what kind of a return do you want on your investments, right? What kind of a return do you really want on your investment? And your investment is not just money. Your investment is also time. Your investment is your brain power of thinking about these things. All new initiatives begin, I believe, because of a time and money challenge. I want to go scale. I want to go do something bigger. Why? I either want to make more money or I want to add some physical people to my organization so that I can do what? Have more time off. And when I don't have the right people, so that I don't have to just keep throwing my labor into this, what will I do? I will stop taking on new initiatives. But then there's something for a lot of us in the room that just starts boiling up as like, but this isn't who I am. I got to go try to figure out how to do more, right? I think it's because, number one, a way to make more money. Number two, a method to get your personal time back, right? How many of you have the money challenge? I'd like to make more money doing this. No, seriously, by show of hands, how many want to make more money doing this? You're okay with the time you're putting in, you just want to make more money. And how many of you are okay with the money, but you really wish you could get your life back and turn it off every now and again? Okay. It's all models are what get us there. Absent a model, absent working things out on paper and being willing to change a few things that we're doing, we're just going to live in this same cycle over and over and over again. I see it all the time. You guys see it too. And for the longest time in our particular industry, the top producers were 24/7. And we watched them do a lot of production. And we thought, in our subconscious, well, you can make a lot of money in real estate, but it's 24/7. And they would probably tell you it was 24/7. It's not true. It's just not. If people would really model things out on a regular basis, really keep looking at their numbers, running P&Ls, looking at conversion rates, looking at spends, looking at all those businessy type things instead of being salespeople, you'd start making some really solid decisions and you'd go, nah, I'm not doing that anymore. There's no return there. I run into this all the time. I ran into it 2 times last week with people that have big purchase business plays. And I'm like, what's your conversion rate? What's your rate of return? I don't know. There's a broker. And I'm like, 'cause he's got like a Zillow team, right? And I'm like, dude, we got to figure this out. So we crawled inside of his Zillow account, and I started doing some quick math for him, and I said, it looks like it's break even at best. Is it worth it? I mean, is it worth the $10,000 spend a month to break even? Well, no. I go, okay, go figure it out and let me know. He sent me a text 2 days ago. He goes, it takes $8 million in production to break even. We're at $4 million year to date. And I said, ouch. We need to go retool the model, don't we? Because when we got inside the model, what we discovered was, and this is a weird pattern for those of you, I don't know if anybody's doing the purchase business thing or not, the weird pattern that I see regularly, the people that are really good at grabbing the leads suck at converting the leads. Almost to a person. It's crazy. And one guy had taken the vast majority of the leads, closed one deal. I go, this is a challenge. I was working with another team on this the other day. All in, their average conversion rate on Zillow, okay, 8.3% for everybody that's taking a lead. Now within that, there's one person operating at 25, 30%. There's other people not so much. I had a team leader a few years ago, and I'm looking at the numbers because he doesn't ever want to look at them. And I'm like, you need to shut him off. Well, he's new. I said, I don't care. He's taken $16,000 worth of leads at your average cost per lead, and his conversion is 0. Now, number one, that's unfair to you. And number two, it's unfair to the other people that could have taken the leads. This is the weird world that I live in with some people, right? Because I think it's always about good money chasing good business. I think there's two nets in life, net income and net time. I just think it's the way you ought to do this. What's the point of not having a life? We got into this because we were going to control our time, right? Remember that? Remember that? Remember those days? Optimally, we want to do both, right? I mean, I ask everybody this all the time, but optimally, don't we want to do both? Don't we want to make more money in less time? It's models that get you there. It's models, and it's really, really enjoying what you do. I got a guy that I work with, and their thing has gone through the roof, and I'm like, what was the key? He said, when I finally realized I had a hammer and a nail, and all I did every day was I hit my nail and I didn't do anything else, and I went and found other people to do the other stuff, he said, that's when the thing exploded. He goes, I honestly, if somebody looked at my schedule, they'd go, well, this is boring. But he goes, it's the thing that I'm the best at, and it's all that I enjoy doing. So why launch new initiatives? Because of time, because of money, okay? Maybe you launch a new initiative because you want a larger market presence. Maybe you launch a new initiative because you want a higher level of service for your people, right? You want a higher level of service for the people on your team, perhaps. You definitely want a higher level of service for your customer. You want an unmatched customer experience. All of these are very valid except that one. And it's the one that a lot of agents use. Well, I think it'll turn, I did this. I think it'll turn at some point. And it's just our egos. It was my ego. I'll just say it. It was my ego. I liked seeing myself in all these places. I didn't have the modeling habit back then. I generated $700,000 in commissions. I made $70,000. It looked good. I was a player. Woo. And people are like, well, how'd you do that? I'm like, it was so simple. You have no idea. You get into I got into lead gen way before other people got into lead gen. And I had a bunch of people that couldn't convert the leads and didn't want to convert the leads. And they told me the leads weren't any good. Well, I'd never taken the leads myself, so I didn't know if they were any good or not. So I kept spending more money to try to get them better leads. And the reality was I had the wrong people. I didn't understand interviewing people. I didn't understand the things I understand 30 years later. You can go do in this industry whatever you choose to go do. I'm not trying to push you to some level you don't want to go to. But I am trying to get you to understand that there is no correlation between the number of hours that a person works and the amount of money they make. It's not true. It doesn't work that way. It's not a hardwired connection. Michael Gerber said in the E-Myth, I think that maybe inside any business there's someone slowly going crazy. That we have things that we're doing that we know are not working, but we're afraid to stop. We're afraid of who it will upset, whatever. It's the human condition. And you can't really see this, but most people quit not because of improper activities, but because of an improper expectation of the activities, i.e., not really having a model worked out on paper. When you start working things out on paper, the reality is you start doing less. You have less activities you're doing, you're just doing them at a much higher level, right? So exercise number 1, I guess number 2 since we took the test. Take out and I didn't give you a blank sheet of paper, but take out a piece of paper, use the back of one of the pages, whatever. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Let your mind go. Write down everything that you want to do in your life from today forward. Let it go. I want to make X. I want to have a jet. I want to take 6 weeks off, whatever. Let your mind go. You just try to write as many things down as you can that flash into your mind that you want to do in your life. Whether it's taking a trip to Europe, whatever it is, go. Let your mind go. I'll give you 3 minutes. How many of you ran out of paper? Nobody ran out of paper. Huh? You came close to running out of paper. Okay. Okay. I would challenge you to do this more regularly, okay? I would challenge you to do this regularly. I always say, you know, sit down by yourself on a regular basis with just a notebook and your thoughts and a cup of coffee or a tea or whatever, and just write stuff down that pops into your head. I learned the first time I ever did this years ago, I learned a very valuable experience. I was working with my two sisters, right? And I ran out of paper, all the stuff I wanted to go do. And they each wrote down like 3 things, right? Which was fine, which was cool. But when I looked at their things, I'm like, well, y'all can go do that now, right? Why don't you just go do that now? You've got the money. Why don't you go do that now? Well, I'm like, well, seriously, why don't you go do that now? Is it hard to let your mind go like that? Is it hard to let your mind not be framed by how much money you have or don't have in your bank account right now, or how many hours you're working or not working right now? We need to get back to like how we're wired as humans to let your mind go. Okay? I just would like for everybody to do that before I come back in December. When we start talking about planning, like really trying to plan out the next year, this is kind of a lead-in to next year. Okay? Now pick your top 3 things. When you go through the list, now if you only had 3, they're your top 3, right? But as you go through your list, circle the top 3. Pick the top 3. Now pick the 1. What's the 1 thing on your list? I mean, I will give this gentleman credit. Keller wrote a book called The One Thing, right? I give him credit. He wrote a book called The One Thing. As a lot of you know, there was a time in my life years ago, I was with Keller Williams for like a year and a half. Gary and I were really good friends at the time. Talked to him every week. And I remember one day I called him. I was a little bit challenged with my team. And he hit me right between the nose, right between the eyes. And I said, you know, what are you seeing on what people ought to be paying a buyer's agent on a team? And he goes, what's your model? And I go, well, I don't have one. Click. And he hung up on me. Now, I enjoyed that. I thought that was great, right? Because I'm like, okay, obviously, you know. And then I called him back later, and I go, I got a model. He goes, didn't mean to be really rude, but did you get it? I go, yeah, I get it, dude. I get it. And he was very much into models, right? Dennis, very much into models. Dave Liniger, very much into models. And I started to realize that the people that I either enjoyed being around, aspired to be like whatever, living life at what I thought was a high level, really running their lives, right? I've talked to you guys about that before. They all were dealing with models all the time. The math doesn't lie, Wayne. And it's funny when you can, like I just used to do this with Dennis all the time. He would always say, the math doesn't lie, the math doesn't lie. So I would do all the math. And I'm like, here, we need to go do this. And he's like, oh, I don't know. And I go, well, you always say the math doesn't lie. The math doesn't lie, dude, right? There was a risk factor in it, though, and he didn't want to take the risk. But the math never lies. So your 1 thing, and so Keller says in the book, and it is true, out of your long list of things that you want to do, what is the 1 thing that if you did that, either A, the rest of it wouldn't matter, or B, you would automatically get everything else on your list, right? And that tends to run it down a financial moment, right? But do you all have 1 thing? Does anybody want to share what your 1 thing is? You don't have to. I just thought maybe.
I'd love to give a car away to somebody that needs it 1 time a year.
You'd love to give a car away 1 time a year. That's awesome. Okay. Can we use your deal as an example? Well, no, I mean, and if not, it's okay.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Give away a car a year. That's really cool, right? So here's the strategy of this, right? You on a regular basis, you make these lists of things. You think things, right? So understand that everything that is in this room was a thought before it was a thing. Somebody thought of a chair before there was a chair. Somebody thought of a table. Somebody thought of this laminate flooring, right? Somebody thought of a fireplace to keep warm, whatever. Everything that we see was always a thought before it was a thing. Every single solitary time. And I will almost bet you that they wrote it down. So when you have thoughts, write them down. And I just think the human condition is we don't think enough. We react a lot, but we don't really sit down and process information. We stare at our phones a lot. We know this. And we're starting to see all the research on how damaging it is to look at your phone a lot. And, you know, you get the notice, or I do, from Apple, you know, how many hours a day where you're on your phone. And if it's low, I feel really good about myself. And it's high, I'm like, oh, what am I doing? And then I realize a lot of, you know, you work out in the morning and you turn iTunes on, they count that. So it's not totally that. But for all of us, really, would life be a little bit better if we just stayed off of our phones for a while? Like last night, my wife and I realized I'd left my phone laying on the counter. We were like we just left the house. We're like 4 blocks away. And I'm like, I forgot my phone. And Kathy's like, you want to go back and get it? And I'm like, no, I don't. It was cool. I had to keep a conversation going, right? I couldn't grab my phone, and it was awesome. We should try that more. Anyway, okay. So then you park it, okay? You think of this idea, you write it out, and then for me, you just set it on the corner of your desk. You just let it simmer if we were cooking, okay? Then, if as you have this stack of paper on your desk of all these ideas that you've parked, you kind of go through them every once in a while, and you're like, wow, what was I thinking there? That's stupid. There's no reason to model that out. But every once in a while, you pick one up and you go, all right, what am I waiting on? Right? What am I waiting on? I got to start modeling this sucker out and see what happens. So you model it out. Then you go park it again. And then you rethink it, and you keep honing it down, and then finally you come to this conclusion, I'm either going to implement this, or I'm going to throw it in the trash can and move on to my next one. It's a discipline that I think we all should try to get moving forward. We all have great ideas. We all have great ideas. My son it's weird, the ideas that he comes up with. And you got to be, once you have an idea, you got to be careful who you share it with. You know, shame on me and his mom for this, but he came up with the idea in college for like online college books where you just order the books online. It would be at a discount because there weren't stores and stuff. I'm like, well, that'll never work. And of course, now it is a thing. He came up with an idea for liquor delivery, which back in the day was no, and of course now that's a thing. So, I mean, he's got these ideas, right? He's a songwriter, so he thinks of all this crap all the time. But implement it or move on. I used this exact strategy. I stand here today in front of you because of this strategy. Because I wrote out, if time and money weren't the issue, as I'd been trained by Proctor, what would you do? And I've told the story before. I said to Bob, I'd be you. And he goes, well, you can't be me. I'm me. And I'm like, oh, if time and money weren't the issue, I'd be teaching and training. And I used this process as a vehicle to write my personal mission statement, which everybody goes, oh, here we go. It's a thing. To teach and train the key people in life and the business and life disciplines, so they understand the balanced life is what you're supposed to have. And when I say that to you, I mean it. I did it 20 years ago. It is my barometer for decisions that are yes or no, right? Is it going to push me closer to it? Let's go. Going to pull me away from it? No. I mean, one of the things that I've realized is we need to learn how to say no faster, right? If you're like me, you say yes to something, and as soon as it comes out of your mouth, you're like, oh man, why did I do that? I didn't really want to do that. Why did I get roped into doing this? This is the book Essentialism I've told you guys about before. That if you're a talented person, you can literally do anything. And if you tell somebody you'll do it, even if it totally messes up your world. You'll figure out a way. You'll get up earlier, you'll stay up later, you'll do it, right? And that pulls us off of doing the things that we really want to do. So I would invite you for each of these things, okay, to use the page that we're going to get to here in just a second. So when you're modeling things out from a monetary standpoint, okay, we're just going to talk money for a second. You want to use higher than expected or longer than expected time frames for you to get there. Okay? So if you really think if you really think this at your core at the first level, I think I could do this in a year. I'm going to use a year model. No, go 18 months. Let's walk into this thing thinking it's going to take longer than you think, because that is one of Dan Clark's old rules. It always takes longer than you think. And also model out higher than expected costs of doing it. And use lower than expected conversion rates. Okay? Use lower than expected conversion rates. And then you have what I call the new idea worksheet. Okay? So I want you to take your one thing that you circled, and I want you to write it at the top of that page. My idea is I want to give a car away once a year to somebody. Okay? Whatever your one thing is, I want you to write it up there. Like seriously, physically write it up there. And then the next part is, what's your win in accomplishing that? What's your win? I'll play myself out as an example. I'll use myself. That way I won't have to drag you down this trail. Okay? My idea is to write a book. I don't know what yours is, but you got to have an idea. Next thing is, what's your win if you pull that off? My win would be higher speaking fees and more freedom. There's a direct correlation in what I do, whether you have a book or not. If you got a book, you're like instantly valid for some reason, your speaking fees go up. What happens when your speaking fees go up? Don't have to speak as much. Get more free time, because that's always how I try to look at this. Well, no, I play a lot of golf, right? I need the following things to implement. Right? And don't just follow me. I mean, I want you to do what your thing is, right? I need the following things to implement that I don't currently have. What are you going to need to know that you don't currently know? Maybe you know everything you need to know about this. I mean, for me, it was I need to know how to write a book, right? I'd made multiple runs at it, and I'm like, well, this cannot be how you do this, right? This is a true story. What materials am I going to need? This one was pretty simple. I just needed Google Docs. That's what I learned. I just needed Google Docs, right? I didn't have Google Docs. I'm 62 years old. I didn't have Google Docs. And what were the actions that I needed to take? I needed to go find somebody that knew how to write a book, right? I needed a book coach. Now, serendipitously, I'd always wanted to write a book. I got all the stuff that runs around in my head, you know. And through an acquaintance, he wrote a damn book. Pissed me off. I'm like, I want to write a book. He goes, well, I did it. I'm like, thanks. I don't have my book done yet, by the way. I'm in the process, but I had another guy that did the same thing. And he goes, oh, I got a book coach. This is a game changer. I said, what's that cost? 20 grand. So now it's like, do you really want to write a book? Right? Do you really want to write a book? So I hired her. And it was awesome. I'm not done with it yet. I'm stuck on chapter 9, just to let you know. I'm just stuck. I've been stuck for a long time on chapter 9. I'm kind of talking to myself today that I need to get back to the process, right? What's the minimum ROI that I want? That's a hard one when you're talking about writing a book, so we'll switch the gears. But that's the first part of the process, right? I can't do this on my own. And stick with it. I know myself. I always have to have, as I said in the very beginning, I personally, Wayne Frederick, have to have somebody that's an integrator. This gal was awesome. She lives in California. And I'm like, I don't even know how to start. I have all these PowerPoints. I have all this stuff. She goes, let's just get on a call. Give me the top. And I just start rambling, and she's taking notes. Like 3 days later, she sends me this unbelievable outline of my book. I'm like, wow, that was worth 20 grand, right? Well, it's only worth 20 grand if I finish the book, right? But either way, it's been a great experience on having to model things out, right? So if we're talking about trying to scale your business, what is your minimum return on investment that you want or that you demand when you take on a new initiative? Because if I looked at the book thing like a realtor does, I just need to get like 30 grand out of this deal and it'll be a push. No, that ain't good enough for me. Do you operate at 3x, 5x? Grant Cardone would tell you 10x. I don't know. What's your minimum rate of return? And this book thing, I will just tell you, I did not intend to go down this road today, but it popped in my head, so I went with it. It is absolutely following the rules that I laid out earlier. It is harder than you think, and God, it takes longer than you think it does. Because I didn't think I was an integrator, but I'm apparently kind of, because I always want to go back and make sure my words are spelled properly in my draft. And she's like, stop it. We'll clean it up later. That's why we have editors. Just go. So we all have this thing, but what is your minimum rate of return? Do you know? Anybody? Anyone?
Mine depends on how much time.
Agreed.
It goes back to that. You know, if you're looking at a passive income, you're looking at a less of a return. If it's an active, something that you're investing in actively, a much greater return.
Right.
If you're talking about internet leads, I want at least a 5 or 6 times a return. Because I think there's other ways to do that. I think open houses do that. I think mailers can do that.
Right.
Different things like that. So I don't have a set mindset when it comes to what's my exact ROI that I want on every deal.
Okay. But there is something that it's like, I won't do it at 1.5 to 1. I don't care what it is because my time's worth more than that. I'll go out on the boat, at 1.5 to 1. At 2 to 1, it might get my attention if it's easy, right? So you just have to stay in this process, right? To be really frank about it, and we've kind of gone down this road today, or I've taken us down this road of purchase business. If people would do this with their purchase business plays, the vast majority of them, I promise you, would just stop. Because it's not even 1 for 1. I've got one client that's outperforming everybody else. And he has he's got $207,000 worth of revenue this year on a $108,000 spend. That's net revenue to him after the buyer's agents take their split. So that's good. There are other people. I've got another client that I'm still trying to get on this trail, to be frank about it. $60,000 loser. I'm like, why are you doing this? Well, I'm afraid to give it up. Why? Well, if I give up my deal, somebody else will take it. So? These are the conversations I have. I'm like, so? Well, I'll lose my number one position. I go, who cares? It costs you $60,000. Let's take the $60,000. How many past clients you got? Well, I don't really know. I go, well, there's the problem. Because how cool could you make people feel with $60,000 spend on a properly sized database? Yes?
Do you, or how do you figure in like a down the road residual on that? Like, so say whatever idea you come up with, and it's dollar for dollar break even on it. But, out of X amount of closings, the referrals we get from those, and, the snowball kind of effect, do you put any kind of value of that?
To me, that's a separate model. Okay? That is I think Jared James makes the comment, whether it's true or not, I don't know, because I haven't done this math. $178,000 per client is the residual if you're doing the proper things, right? So will I feed the tiger in the beginning to get this on the backside? But then you have to have a model to actually stay in flow with those people so you get it on the backside, or what was the point? Some of you may have seen it. I did a little Facebook video a couple of weeks ago about past clients, about where's your business really come from. So we had a series of people that told us their numbers, and there was only 2 questions on the survey. How many people do you believe are referral sources for you, i.e. your database, your CRM, your shoebox, your Rolodex, your Excel spreadsheet, whatever it is? How many people do you have? And then how many transactions came from that in the last 12 months? And I have a model that I test with all my clients, right? And the average efficiency of the respondents from literally all over the country was 27% of the model. They were only getting 27% of what we know is you're capable of. Most of my clients are operating at 75% and above. The average for the people that replied was 27%. I think that's not great. I think it's why the Zillows, the OpCities, the whoever's have continued to fund this. Years ago, I don't know where I did with it, but I had a quote from a venture capitalist, and he said, the real estate industry is ripe for disruption. It's a bunch of individual people who are not cohesively doing anything, and we can hang in there and play in this arena. And that's what we're seeing play out, guys. Okay? So I think that's a separate model on what's it going to cost me to have this incredibly effective past client program, right? And there is a model for it. It's a spend of, from a brokerage level, well, with 20 people at a brokerage level, with concise communications and doing all those things, about a $40,000 spend, okay? That includes client parties, that includes giveaways at client parties, inviting people. Everybody has different tasks. This is a model that I've been working with for a long time with one guy. Your cost, I'll just tell you, as an individual agent, will be much higher than if you teamify around this issue and you get 5 or 6 people to do it with you. If you get 6 people who have an average database size of 100 people, okay, and you do all of these things, your cost per person in your database Emma, I got the exact number, but it's about $50 a year per person. It's about a $5,000 spend, okay? If you're doing it in harmony with 5 or 6 other agents, you're gonna spend about $5,000 per 100 people as an individual agent, but you're gonna teamify around the event part of it, and that becomes a lot of the touches and a lot of the making people feel special. Now, to me, that is $5,000 a year is much better spent than going out and trying to play a Zillow game at $5,000, because you might as well go out in a parking lot and burn $100 bills, right? This is how I weirdly, this is my life. You want to know what Wayne does all day? This is what I do. I just, give me the numbers. Well, I don't have the numbers. We'll go get the numbers and we'll figure out where the good spend is, okay? But you can do it effectively in a group, a small group, for about $50 a person, okay, for the year, which is not a lot of money, right? Buffini will talk about this in the 100 Days to Greatness on the pop buys, right? And I'll just add my own take on the pop buys, right? When your database gets big enough, the thing that falls off are the pop buys. You can't physically pop by, and you guys are different here because you got a lot of second home people anyway. That's why I came up with the closed Facebook group idea. It's a reverse pop by. You just post your stuff in your closed Facebook group and they pop in to you. Because you really can't effectively do pop buys here, can you? I mean, it'd be tough, right? But what if we create, from a model standpoint, just this really cool closed Facebook group where you're in there all the time on a regular basis doing this really cool something or other. I know you guys do client parties, right? They're huge, aren't they? You make me feel really special. Real world example of this, of such, it's just so lacking, it makes me so mad. And how vulnerable we all are. This literally happened yesterday. So I might have told you the story. Got some commercial buildings that we own. The insurance went on the renewal from $23,000 to $58,000. You remember me telling you that last time? And the guy that I've used for a long time, he didn't handle it well. He basically said, "Oh yeah, they're going to give you this deal to me." I'm like, dude, I got to go. I got to research this, right? I just have to. Haven't heard anything else from him. I did get a canned mailer last week from his company with his picture on it. Just, it wasn't from him. It just, they do it for their people and I threw it away. And yesterday I'm going through the mail and there's this envelope. I should have brought it with me. There's this envelope and it has a picture of my house in the little see-through thing. And it's hand addressed to me. I'm like, well, that's weird. Well, that made me open it. It was from an insurance agent with another company. And they had done the research on my house and said, we believe that, we know that your policy is getting ready to come up for renewal. We think your premium would be around this number. If you'd like to talk to us, let us know. Well, now my policy's coming up for renewal at the end of October. I ain't heard from my guy at all. So what did I do? I went on my app and I dug around a little bit because I'll be honest, how many of you know exactly how much your annual premium is on your house? Raise your hand. Because you're better than me if you know it. I had no clue. Double what was on this letter. So I'm driving up here this morning thinking, may not call that person, but I think I might start making some phone calls. What would keep me from making those phone calls? Strong relationship with my insurance agent. So it's not a real estate gig, right? If I have an incredibly strong relationship, I'm just going to go, whatever, throw it away, because I trust that my people are taking care of me, right? This is why part of the ongoing communications with people should be, here's the value of your house today, just wanted you to let you know. You'll switch stockbrokers if they don't call you and want to do some kind of an analysis on where your investment portfolio is right now. The first time somebody, I'm getting those too for some reason all of a sudden. Are you susceptible to this? Or are you the agent, as one of my buddies is in Springfield, Morgan Spillman? I'm sitting down, we go to this, somebody had a baby shower, we go, a bunch of people, we're sitting at a table like this, I'm sitting across from these people, and I don't have any idea who they are, just strike up a conversation with them. The guy goes, what do you do? I said, well, I'm in the real estate business. I said, I used to own the RE/MAX office here in town. He goes, do you know Morgan Spillman? I go, yeah. Honey, he knows Morgan. I swear to God this happened. I'm not embellishing at all. Honey, he knows Morgan. Oh my God, Morgan Spillman. He's the greatest real estate agent on the planet. We love him. You know him. I'm like, yeah, I recruited him. I recruited him as a brand new agent. So he's a great guy. Honey, text Morgan right now and tell him, what was your name again? I said, Wayne Frederick. Said, tell him we're having dinner with Wayne Frederick. Do you have that kind of relationship with your people? Some of your people? Most of your people? All of your people? Because to me, the challenge is it's all of your freaking people. And that means we're going to have to readjust funds from the things we're chasing over here, right? We talked about it, I think, last time I was here or 2 times ago. All this online stuff has a set of protocols to it. It has a model to it of things you have to do. And I know, because I hear it all the time from people, I know from an industry standpoint, if we knew all the rules of converting some of this online business before we started, we would have gone, I'm out. I am not doing that. Because the time frames are really long, the emails, the constant routine mundane task, as I always call it, right? Sorry, I got off on a tangent about past clients. It's just a thing, right? Figure out your minimum ROI. It will be different probably based on time, energy, and effort, and financial responsibility. How long will you give yourself for this to work? How much are you going to have to spend given that longer time frame than you really think it's going to take? Do you have the money to do it? Because if you don't have the money set aside to do this, please don't start. Because you'll quit. It'd be like going out trying to build a house and you don't really have the construction financing in place, or you got half of it. Well, maybe I can cut some corners here or there. And it is such a big number. You're like, well, I would never do that. But we do it all day in real estate. How many leads do you think you'll get from it? What's your projected conversion rate? What's your conversion rate right now on that type of business? Do you know? Most people don't. Most people have no idea what their conversion rates are. I mean, honestly, I go back to the Zillow thing because some of the data is there. Some of my clients, they're very, very successful people, but they have no idea what their team conversion rates are. And they're frustrated with follow-up. It's the number one thing I hear all the time. How do I get these people to follow up? They won't follow up with these leads. Cut the people off that aren't following up. But what are the protocols that you've laid out for them to follow up on leads? Well, I haven't done that. Well, you need to. We got to have a model, right, on how often do we expect to follow up. We covered that a few times ago. What's your average income per transaction, right? So what would your gross revenue be from that? Now, the reason I had to switch from I could do my book thing, but from your car, how much gross revenue, though, how much extra revenue do you need to be able to buy someone a car every year and give it away? And what value car do we want to buy? We want to give away a Porsche every year? Well, no, but that's what I mean. It's like a car, that's a big word, as Dennis taught me. What kind of car? Do you know?
I was thinking like some kind of a minivan or something to help somebody.
Okay, so I want to be able to give a minivan away every year. Okay? Who are we going to give it to?
People that are in need. Like,
What's going to be the criteria for the people in need?
devastating event occurred,
Okay. And how are you going to find those people?
through associations that I network with.
Okay. And what's going to be your criteria for who's actually going to get the van? Okay, I'm just, I know you haven't, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. I'm not. There's a guy, a buddy of mine in Springfield named Wade Palmer. Single guy, no kids. He started a deal 30 years ago called Help Give Hope. And it started out as him just going to, they always ran this thing in the Springfield paper of the people that needed help. And it started out with him just going out to a bunch of his buddies and saying, give me some money. I got no kids. I want to start just doing this. Help Give Hope now has a 30,000 square foot warehouse. And it is amazing what they've been able to do over the years. I mean, you've got a full-time person that runs it, and it's, you know, we have Convoy of Hope in Springfield as well, same type deal, right? So I just want you to start with, like, how are we going to find these people, and what's that criteria going to be? And then how much revenue is it going to take, right? It's going to take extra revenue, correct? Because if we already had the revenue and this was our one thing, we'd already be doing it anyway. So we're going to have extra revenue. Where's that revenue going to come from? It's going to have to be some kind of a new initiative. What's our return going to have to be to spend off the extra money to buy a van and to give it to those people? Does that make sense? It's harder than Billy hell to do on a regular basis because we're not wired this way. We're salespeople, right? We see, we go. We're action oriented. But I promise you that if you'll start doing this, right? Just work, make multiple copies of this sheet, seriously. And your first level is when you have an idea from sitting down, having a cup of coffee, and you're like, well, that'd be cool. Just get one of these pages out and write it at the top. Here's my idea. And your win would be what?
My win is that I've helped people through my, faith.
Right.
And, being able to reach out and give back.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be much more than that. It doesn't have to be as selfish as I would raise my speaking fees if I had a book, right? But, I really want us to get this down. It'll change everything for you. It really, really will. Okay? So your homework for the next, 2 months and a half, I guess, before I come back, whenever your Christmas party is, right? Your homework is to make multiple copies of these sheets and really start trying to do this. There's a bunch of them, they'll just go in the trash can, right, when you start modeling them out. But I will tell you, and some others in the room could probably speak to this, there's things that I've pulled the trigger on because I'm this guy, well, the 90% visionary guy. There are things that I pulled the trigger on that if I would have modeled them out, I would have never done them. They died on paper, right? So the question always is, did it fly or die when you wrote it all out? Is it something that's attainable for you? Could you do it? It'll come down to the time that you invest, the knowledge that you have, and the financial capabilities that you have, right? Sometimes you have to go and join more people into it. Sometimes you have to, hire a coach that's already done something like this, right? Like if you want to, in all seriousness, I'll make this promise to you. If you really want to go do this, I'll get you hooked up with Wade. And he'll tell you how he did it when he first started it. Because it's grown into this unbelievable, really cool thing. So whatever your driver is, it always takes a model. And if you talk to, you listen to, you read about people, they had a model. They really, really did. You talk to Dennis about this at length. A lot of what you guys have in RE/MAX today, one of the things in RE/MAX today, the 95-5 commission split, was modeled out between Dennis and Dave Liniger in a cab on their way to the airport. Dennis is a huge numbers man, if you've ever been around Dennis. He's a math guy. That's why I love him, right? But we've got to ingrain more of this into our businesses, i.e. our lives. And we do it, we all do it when we're forced to by the banker, right? I mean, we deal with this every day with people. They have to qualify for the loan. So what does the banker do? They run your finances through their model. We need to be doing the same thing. That's my message. So just make copies of the one sheet. Come in in December with a whole bunch of ideas that we've modeled out, and maybe we'll dig into them, the subtleties of it. Maybe I can hook you up with someone that's done the same thing. I've always felt like that's part of the unsaid value of the RE/MAX system, is whatever you want to do, I'll almost guarantee you somebody in this room knows somebody in another market that's already done the same thing. And the beautiful part is they'll tell you how they did it. So there you go. I'm done. Thank you guys. I appreciate you.